Happy Halloween, everybody! And more than that, welcome to another season of Christmas Past, our 9th one together. Whether you're a new or long-time listener, I'm happy to have you along for an all-new season of backstories to Christmas traditions, sharing your Christmas memories, and a few surprises along the way. Yes, it is still Halloween, and we're only 2 months into the Burr months. We're still largely in pumpkin spice mode. But there are 55 days left until Christmas. Or, to put it another way, 55 days left to bask in the warm glow of the Christmas spirit. So, for people like you and me, the Christmas season is here, and it can peacefully coexist along with the jack-o'-lanterns and miniature candy bars. In fact, Halloween is the perfect time to kick things off, because it gives us a chance to honor that classic Christmas tradition of sharing a ghost story. Our Victorian forebears really loved their ghost stories, for all occasions, but perhaps especially for Christmas. Many magazines of the era published ghost stories specifically for the Christmas season. Those stories didn't necessarily involve Christmas, but they were meant to be enjoyed on Christmas Eve, adding an extra chill to a cold winter's night. Though that tradition has faded, it's not gone altogether, and that's thanks in part to my friends at Biblioasis Publishing. Every year they publish a series of classic ghost stories beautifully illustrated by the acclaimed artist known only as Seth. It's become a yearly tradition here on Christmas Past to start the season off with a story from their current series. Today it's a story from the British writer L.P. Hartley. It first appeared in a collection of short stories called The Traveling Grave and Other Stories. When a group of tourists visits the deserted island of Podolo, one of them wants to rescue a feral cat they find there, and the others reluctantly agree. Unfortunately, the rescue proves more difficult than they expect, and they soon discover they're not alone on Podolo. So, if you're ready, and if you dare, settle in with me as we visit Podolo. In the evening before we made the expedition to Podolo, we talked it over, and I agreed there was nothing against it really. "But why did you say you'd feel safer if Walter was going too?" Angela asked me. And Walter said, "What good should I be? I can't help row the gondola, you know." Then I felt rather silly, for everything I had said about Podolo was merely conversational exaggeration meant to whet their curiosity, like a newspaper headline. And I knew that when Angela actually saw the dull little island, its stony and inhospitable shore littered with broken bottles and empty tins, she would think what a fool I was with my romancing. So I took back everything I said, called my own bluff as it were, and explained that I avoided Podolo only because of its exposed position. It was 4 miles from Venice, and if a boisterous Bora got up, as it sometimes did without warning, we should find getting back hard work and might be home late. And what will Walter say, I wound up, if he comes back from Trieste, where he was going for a couple of days on business, and finds no wife to welcome him? Walter said, on the contrary, he had often wished such a thing might happen, and so, after some playful recriminations between this lately married, charming, devoted couple, we agreed that Podolo should be the goal for tomorrow's picnic. "We must curb my wife's generous impulses," Walter warned me. "She always wants to do something for somebody. It's an expensive habit." I assured him that at Podolo she would find no calls on her heart or her purse. Except for perhaps a rat or two, it was quite uninhabited. Next morning, in brilliant sunshine, Walter gulped down his breakfast and started for the station. It seemed hard that he should have to spend 6 hours of this divine day in a stuffy train. I stood on the balcony watching his departure. The sunlight sparkled on the water. The gondola, in its best array, glowed and glittered. "Say goodbye to Angela for me," cried Walter as the gondolier braced himself for the first stroke. "And what is your postal address at Podolo?" "Full fathom 5, I called out, but I don't think my reply reached him. Until you get right up to Podolo, you can form no estimate of its size. There's nothing nearby to compare it with. On the horizon it looks like a foot rule. Even now, though I have been there many times, I cannot say whether it is 100 yards long or 200, but I have no wish to go back and make certain. We cast anchor a few feet away from the stony shore. Podolo, I must say, was looking its best, green, flowery, almost welcoming. One side is rounded to form the shallow arc of a circle, the other is straight. Seen from above, it must look almost like a moon in its first quarter. Seen as we saw it from the waterline with its grassy rampart behind, it forms a kind of natural amphitheater. The slim, withy-like acacia trees give a certain charm to the foreground, and to the background, where they grow in clumps and cast darker shadows, an air of mystery. As we sat in the gondola, we were like theater-goers in stalls looking at an empty stage. It was nearly 2 o'clock when we began lunch. I was very hungry, and charmed by my companion and occupied by my food, I did not let my eyes stray out of the boat. To Angela belonged the honor of discovering the first denizen of Podolo. "Why," she exclaimed, "there's a cat!" Sure enough, there was. A little cat, hardly more than a kitten, very thin and scraggly and mewing with automatic regularity every 2 or 3 seconds. Standing on the weedy stones at the water's edge, it was a pitiful sight. "It smelt the food," said Angela. "It's hungry. Probably it's starving." Mario, the gondolier, had almost made the discovery, but he received it in a different spirit. "Povera bestia," he cried in sympathetic accents, but his eyes brightened. Its owners did not want it. "It has been put here on purpose, one sees." The idea that the cat had been left to starve caused him no great concern, but it shocked Angela profoundly. "How abominable!" she exclaimed. "We must take it something to eat at once." The suggestion did not recommend itself to Mario, who had to haul up the anchor and see the prospect of his own lunch growing more remote. I, too, thought we might wait until the meal was over. The cat would not die before our eyes. Angela could brook no delay, so, to the accompaniment of a good deal of stamping and heavy breathing, the prow of the gondola was turned to land. Meanwhile, the cat continued to meow, though it had retreated a little and was almost invisible, a thin wisp of tabby fur, against the parched stems of the outermost grasses. Angela filled her hand with chicken bones. "I shall try to win its confidence with these," she said. "And then, if I can, I shall catch it and put it on the boat, and we'll take it to Venice. If it's left here, it'll certainly starve." She climbed along the knife-like gunwale of the gondola and stepped delicately onto the slippery boulders. Continuing to eat my chicken in comfort, I watched her approach the cat. It ran away, but only a few yards. Its hunger was obviously keeping its fear at bay. She threw a bit of food and it came nearer. Another, and it came nearer still. Its demeanor grew less suspicious. Its tail rose into the air. It came right up to Angela's feet. She pounced, but the cat was too quick for her, and it slipped through her hands like water. Again, hunger overpowered mistrust. Back it came. Once more, Angela made a grab for it, and once more it eluded her. But the third time, she was successful. She got a hold of its leg. I shall never forget seeing it dangle from Angela's, fortunately, gloved hand. It wriggled and squirmed and fought, and in spite of its tiny size, the violence of its struggles made Angela quiver like a twig in a gale. And all the while, it made the most extraordinary noise, the angriest, wickedest sounds I ever heard. Instead of growing louder as its fury mounted, the sound actually decreased in volume, as though the creature was being choked by its own rage. The spitting died away into the thin ghost of a snarl, infinitely malevolent but hardly more audible from where I was than the hiss of air from a punctured tire. Mario was distressed by what he felt to be Angela's brutality. "Poor beast," he exclaimed with pitying looks. "She ought not to treat it like that." And his face gleamed with satisfaction when, intimidated by the whirling claws, she let the cat drop. It streaked away into the grass, its belly to the ground. Angela climbed back into the boat. "I nearly had it," she said, her voice still unsteady from the encounter. "I think I shall get it next time, or shall throw a coat over it." She ate her asparagus in silence, throwing the stalks over the side. I saw that she was preoccupied and couldn't get the cat out of her mind. Any form of suffering in others affected her almost like an illness. I began to wish we hadn't come to Podolo. It was not the first time a picnic there had gone badly. "I tell you what," Angela said suddenly. "If I can't catch it, I'll kill it. It's only a question of dropping one of these boulders on it. I could do it quite easily." She disclosed her plan to Mario, who was horror-struck. His code was different than hers. He did not mind the animal dying of slow starvation, but that was the course of nature. But deliberately to kill it? Poveretto! It had done no one any harm, he exclaimed with indignation. But there was another reason I suspected for his attitude. Venice is overrun with cats, chiefly because it is considered unlucky to kill them. If they fall into the water and are drowned, so much the better, but woe betide whoever pushes them in. I expounded the gondolier's point of view to Angela, but she was not impressed. Of course I don't expect him to do it, she said, nor you either, if you'd rather not. It may be a messy business, but it will soon be over. Poor little brood, it's in a horrible state. Its life can't have any pleasure to it. But we don't know that, I urged, still cravenly averse from the deed of blood. If it could speak, it might say it preferred to live at all costs. But I couldn't move Angela from her purpose. Let's go and explore the island, she said, until it's time to bathe. The cat will have got over its fright and be hungry again by then, and I'm sure I shall be able to catch it. I promise I won't murder it except as a last resource. The word murder lingered unpleasantly in my mind as we made our survey of the island. You couldn't imagine a better place for one. During the war, a battery had been mounted there. The concrete emplacement, about as long as a tennis court, remained. But nature and the weather had conspired to break it up, leaving black holes large enough to admit a man. These holes were like crevices in a glacier, but masked by vegetation instead of snow. Even in the brilliant afternoon sunlight, one had to tread cautiously. Perhaps the cat has his lair down there, I said, indicating a gloomy cavern with a jagged edge. I suppose its eye would shine in the dark. Angela lay down on the pavement and peered in. I thought I heard something move, she said, but it might be anywhere in this rabbit warren. Our bathe was a great success. The water was so warm one hardly felt the shock of going in. The only drawback was the mud, which clung to Angela's white bathing shoes, nasty, sticky stuff. A wind had got up, but the grassy rampart sheltered us. We leaned against it and smoked. Suddenly, I noticed it was past 5. We ought to go soon, I said. We promised, do you remember, to send the gondola to meet Walter's train. All right, said Angela, just let me have a go at the cat first. Let's put the food, we had brought some of the remnants of lunch with us, here, where we last saw it, and watch. There was no need to watch, for the cat appeared at once and made for the food. Angela and I stole up behind it, but I inadvertently kicked a stone, and the cat was off like a flash. Angela looked at me reproachfully. Perhaps you could manage better alone, I said. Angela seemed to think she could. I retreated a few yards, but the cat, no doubt scenting a trap, refused to come out. Angela threw herself on the pavement. I can see it, she muttered. I must win its confidence again. Give me 3 minutes and I'll catch it. 3 minutes passed. I felt concerned for Angela, her lovely hair floating over the dark hole, her face, as much as one could see of it, a little red. The air was getting chilly. Look here, I said. I'll wait for you in the gondola. When you've caught it, give a shout and I'll have the boat brought to land. Angela nodded. She dare not speak for fear of scaring her prey. So I returned to the gondola. I could just see the line of Angela's shoulders. Her face, of course, was hidden. Mario stood up, eagerly watching the chase. She loves it so much, he said, that she wants to kill it. I remembered Oscar Wilde's epigram rather uncomfortably. Still, nothing could be more disinterested than Angela's attitude to the cat. We ought to start, the gondolier warned me. The signor will be waiting at the station and wonder what has happened. What about Walter? I called across the water. He won't know what to do. Her mind was clearly on something else as she said, Oh, he'll find his own way home. More minutes passed. The gondolier smiled. One must have patience with ladies, he said. Always patience. I tried a last appeal. If we started at once, we could just do it. She didn't answer. Presently I called out again. What luck, Angela? Any hope of catching him? There was a pause. Then I heard her say, in a curiously tense voice, I'm not trying to catch him now. The need for immediate hurry had passed since we were irrevocably late for Walter. A sense of relaxation stole over me. I wrapped the rug around me to keep off the treacherous cold sirocco, and I fell asleep. Almost at once, it seemed, I began to dream. In my dream, it was night. We were hurrying across the lagoon, trying to be in time for Walter's train. It was so dark I could see nothing but the dim blur of Venice ahead and the little splash of whitish water where the oar dipped. Suddenly I stood rowing and looked around. The seat behind me seemed to be empty. Angela, I cried, but there was no answer. I grew frightened. "Mario," I shouted, "where's the Signora? We have left her behind. We must go back at once." The gondolier, too, stopped rowing and came towards me. I could just distinguish his face, and it had a wild look. "She's there, Signor," he said. "But where? She's not on the seat." "She wouldn't stay on it," said the gondolier, and then, as is the way in dreams, I knew what his next words would be. "We loved her, and so we had to kill her." An uprush of panic woke me. The feeling of relief at getting back to actuality was piercingly sweet. I was restored to the sunshine. At least I thought so in the ecstasy of returning consciousness. The next moment I began to doubt, and an uneasiness not unlike the beginning of a nightmare stirred in me again. I opened my eyes to the daylight, but they did not perceive it. I looked out into the darkness. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. I wondered if I was fainting. But a glance at my watch explained everything. It was past 7 o'clock. I had slept the brief twilight through, and now it was night, though a few gleams lingered in the sky over Fusina. Mario was not to be seen. I stood up and looked around. There he was on the poop, his knees drawn up, asleep. Before I had time to speak, he opened his eyes, like a dog. "Signor," he said, "you went to sleep, so I did too." To sleep out of hours is considered a joke all the world over. We both laughed. "But the Signora," he said, "is she asleep, or is she still trying to catch the cat?" We strained our eyes toward the island, which was much darker than the surrounding sky. "That's where she was," said Mario, pointing, "but I can't see her now." "Angela!" I called. There was no answer. Indeed, no sound at all but the noise of the waves lapping against the gondola. We stared at each other. "Let us hope she has taken no harm," said Mario, a note of anxiety in his voice. "The cat was very fierce, but it wasn't big enough to hurt her, was it?" No, I said. "It might have scratched her when she was putting her face, into one of those holes." "She was trying to kill it, wasn't she?" asked Mario. I nodded. "Ha fatto male," said Mario. "In this country, we are not accustomed to kill cats." "You call, Mario," I said impatiently. "Your voice is stronger than mine." Mario obeyed with a shout that might have raised the dead. But no answer came. "Well," I said briskly, trying to conceal my agitation, "we must go and look for her, or else we shall be late to dinner, and the Signora will be getting worried. She must be a heavy sleeper." Mario didn't answer. "Avanti," I said. "Andiamo, coraggio." I could not understand why Mario, usually so quick to execute an order, did not move. He was staring straight in front of him. "There is someone on the island," he said at last, "but it is not the Signora." I must say, to do us justice, that within a couple of minutes we had beached the boat and landed. To my surprise, Mario kept the oar in his hand. "I have a pocket knife," he remarked, "but the blade is only so long," indicating the third joint of a stalwart little finger. "It was a man, then?" I said. "It looked like a man's head." "But you're not sure?" "No, because it didn't walk like a man." "How then?" Mario bent forward and touched the ground with his free hand. I couldn't imagine why a man would go on all fours unless he didn't want to be seen. "He must have come while we were asleep," I said. "There'll be a boat round the other side. But let's look here first." We were standing by the place where we had last seen Angela. The grass was broken and bent. She had left a handkerchief there to mark the spot. Otherwise, there was no trace of her. "Now let's find his boat," I said. We climbed the grassy rampart and began to walk round the shallow curve, stumbling over concealed brambles. Not here," muttered Mario. From our little eminence we could see clusters of lights twinkling across the lagoon. Fusina 3 or 4 miles away on the left, Malamocco the same distance to the right, and straight ahead, Venice, floating on the water like a swarm of fireflies. But no boat. We stared at each other, bewildered. "So he didn't come by water," said Mario at last. "He must have been here all the time." "But are you quite certain it wasn't the Signora you saw?" I asked. "How could you tell in the darkness?" "Because the Signora was wearing a white dress," said Mario, "and this one is all in black, unless he is a Negro. That's why it's so difficult to see him." "Yes, we can't see him, but he can see us all right." I felt a curious sensation in my spine. "Mario," I said, "he must have seen her, Do you think he's got anything to do with her not being here?" Mario didn't answer. I don't understand why he doesn't speak to us. Perhaps he can't speak. But you thought he was a man. Anyhow, we are 2 against 1. Come on. You take the right, I'll go to the left. We soon lost sight of each other in the darkness, but once or twice I heard Mario swearing as he scratched himself on the thorny acacias. My search was more successful than I expected. Right at the corner of the island, close to the water's edge, I found one of Angela's bathing shoes. She must have taken it off in a hurry, for the button was torn away. A little later, I made a rather grisly discovery. It was the cat, dead, with its head crushed. The pathetic little heap of fur would never suffer the pangs of hunger again. Angela had been as good as her word. I was just going to call Mario when the bushes parted and something hurled itself upon me. I was swept off my feet. Alternately dragging and carrying me, my captor continued its headlong course. The next thing I knew, I was pitched pell-mell into the gondola and felt the boat move underneath me. "Mario!" I gasped. And then, absurd question, "What have you done with the oar?" The gondolier's white face stared down at me. "The oar? I left it. It wasn't any use, senor. I tried. What it wants is a machine gun." He was rowing frantically with my oar. The island began to recede. "But we can't go away," I cried. The gondolier said nothing, but rowed with all his strength. Then he began to talk under his breath. It was a good oar, too, I heard him mutter. Suddenly he left the poop, climbed over the cushions, and sat down beside me. "When I found her," he whispered, "she wasn't quite dead." I began to speak, but he held up his hand. "She asked me to kill her." "But Mario—" "Before it comes back," she said. And then she said, "It's starving too, and it won't wait." Mario bent his head nearer, but his voice was almost inaudible. "Speak up," I cried. The next moment, I implored him to stop. Mario clambered onto the poop. "You don't want to go to the island now, senor?" No. Straight home." I looked back. Transparent darkness covered the lagoon, save for one shadow that stained the horizon black. Podolo. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe not quite a ghost story, because after all, we don't know what that malevolent force on Podolo was. Well, just the same, I want to wish you a happy Halloween and a happy transition into the Christmas season. If you're like me, right about now you're feeling that unmistakable mix of festive and spooky. They're not mutually exclusive, you know. And maybe you're also starting to think about some of your favorite Christmas memories. Sean in South Dakota certainly is. Here he is now to tell us all about it.
Hey Christmas Past, this is Sean Covell in Deadwood, South Dakota, and I want to share with you one of my earliest and most vivid Christmas memories that recently got an update. So my family and I were all sitting around the living room on Christmas Eve, and we were going around telling our own personal favorite Christmas memories. And when it came to me, I talked about how I, just like all kids in the whole wide world, always wanted to catch Santa in the act. And when I'd wake up because I'd hear him downstairs, I'd head over to the stairs and come down around the landing, and then I'd hear my dad's voice call out from the parents' bedroom, "It's too early, go back to bed." But one year, I woke up because I heard Santa, and I realized that Grandma Alice was staying in the other bedroom upstairs. And that's my mom's mom, and I knew there was no way that my dad would send Grandma Alice back to bed. So I went in to wake Grandma up. I said, "Grandma, Santa's here." She says, "Oh, Santa's here. We better go see Santa." I'm like, "Yes." And she gets up and she says, "But if I'm going to meet Santa Claus, I should probably put on my house coat." So she puts on this big house coat that's got a sash and she ties it. And as we walk to the stairs, she passes the bathroom and says, "Oh, actually, if I'm going to meet Santa, I should probably brush my hair." And she had one of those Victorian-looking hairbrushes with the tin back and the white bristles, and she's brushing her white hair, and it feels like it's taking forever. And then she's done. She says, "Okay, let's go." So I turn back, and she says, "Actually, if I'm going to meet Santa, I should probably put on some lipstick." And I'm, vibrating at this point. Like, "Grandma, this is pretty time sensitive." So she puts on her lipstick, and then she comes over and takes my hand, and her hand is so warm, and her skin is kind of almost like papery. And so we walk down the stairs and come around to the landing, and there's the Christmas tree, and it's all lit up, and presents are just pouring out, and I see this amazing scene. But what I don't see is Santa Claus. And then I hear Dad's voice. Oh, it's too early. Go back to bed. And I look up at Grandma and she looks at me and she says, maybe next year. So I tell that story to the family and I notice that my mom, she gets quiet and a little bit sad. And we ask, what's wrong? And she said, your grandmother was never here on a Christmas Eve. She said she came from Nebraska to stay with us at the end of her life, and she stayed in that room, but she passed at the end of November. So she was never, ever part of one of our Christmas days. But I have to tell you, to this day, I can still feel her hand in mine, and I can remember every millisecond of that experience. So that's my favorite Christmas memory. Then it might also be my favorite ghost story. So well played, Grandma Alice. Well played. And thank you.
Well now, what about you? What's on your mind as we embark on this Christmas season for 2024? What memories are coming up for you? Are they haunting, like Sean's? Funny? Sad? Inspiring? Well, I want to hear about them and share them with the rest of the Christmas Past family. All you have to do is record yourself speaking into your phone's voice memo app and send it to christmaspastpodcast@gmail.com. Keep it reasonably short, clean, and family-friendly, and be sure to say your name and where you're from. If you want to know more about Biblioasis and its series of ghost stories, just go to biblioasis.com. I put a link in the show notes. I love how sharing their stories with you has become a tradition on Christmas Past these last few seasons. I hope you do too. Be on the lookout for more of these pre-season episodes between now and Thanksgiving. And of course, join me on Thanksgiving Day to kick off another official season of the fascinating stories behind our favorite holidays' traditions. And as always, I want to share your Christmas memories. Now would be the perfect time to send one to appear in an episode later this season. So I'll see you soon, and until then, let me tell you that Christmas Past is produced in wonderful Willow Glen, California by yours truly, Brian Earl. Thank you so much to Sean in South Dakota, thank you to my friends at Biblioasis Publishing, and thank you for listening. You can drop me a line anytime, and I always love to hear from you. Again, I'm at christmaspastpodcast@gmail.com, or stay connected with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And do join our private Christmas Past Facebook group if you haven't yet. And hey, if you're really feeling the Christmas spirit, why not help more people discover the show? It's as simple as telling a friend about it or leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. If you do leave a review, I'll send you a Christmas Past sticker, and a handwritten Christmas card is my way of saying thanks. Reach out for details, and until we meet again, may your days be merry and bright.